Welcome, Cobb. This is part two, a world first for Let's Talk NPL Football. Backed by popular demand, we had an awesome chat last week, mainly speaking about racism and your experiences with that topic in football and outside of football. And a lot of people said that they would have loved us to delve a bit deeper. So here we are, delving a bit deeper. We've asked for some questions from people who listen and watch at home. I'm really excited to hear more of your responses because I think the overwhelming majority think you're very articulate and a good voice to listen to on this topic. So well done on last week and looking forward to today, mate.
Thanks, Stubbs. Yeah, I do appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity to have a chat about these kind of things. So yeah, thanks for the call back.
My pleasure, mate. Let's get straight into it. So one question we had from people at home was, what do you think is the best way to deal with racism when it happens on the pitch?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because, and I had a little bit of a think about this, and I've thought about it, especially this year in pre-season. I don't know, I don't think you were actually playing that game, but there was a game that we played at the start of the season. I won't name the team, but I had someone punch me in the face. Whether it was accidental or not, I didn't think it was, but they punched me in the face. And I thought to myself, okay, well, my reaction was to pin this guy down, and then I didn't punch him back or anything, but I pinned him down. And then I got sent off. He got sent off. It was just a preseason game. And then at the end of that game, I was thinking, was that the right thing to do, to kind of retaliate with violence? And it's the same thing with racism. Should you retaliate with violence, or should you retaliate with words and with actions? And I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced either way. I think sometimes, I'm not condoning violence, but I think sometimes people need to know that what they did was wrong. And I think that sometimes words can't do that alone. But at the same time, when you're violent, it can create all kinds of problems as well. Like what we saw with Neymar. I'm not sure if you kept up with it, but last week Neymar, when he was playing PSG against Marseille in the French league, Neymar got called. I can't swear on this show, can I?
Keep it PG.
Yeah, I'll keep it PG. But basically, Neymar got called a monkey mother. Yeah. By one of the Marseille players, Gonzalez. And Neymar ended up fighting with this guy and punched him over the back of the head because of what he said. And this Gonzalez guy denied everything. So, the jury's kind of out. But it got me thinking as well, what's the right reaction to have when a player calls you whatever, some sort of racist something. And I thought, violence probably isn't the right thing in that situation, but the player who made that comment needs to know that it was wrong and needs to know that if they do the same thing again, then there's going to be consequences. So I'm a little bit torn between the two. There's also the whole situation, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Martin Luther King advocated for marching and peaceful protesting, and Malcolm X was on the other side. Malcolm X was very much about we want to separate from white America. We want to, we're going to, if we get attacked, then we're going to attack back. So there's two different approaches there. And I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's something we can chat about or people can comment and lean into what they think as well. But I think it's really dependent on the situation. If someone's really attacking you, then I think you should defend yourself. But yeah, in summary, it depends. Yeah.
I think that I listen to you speaking, and I think from an idealistic standpoint, violence can create a negatively reinforcing cycle where, there might be stereotypes that exist about a certain minority group, and then by them responding violently, those stereotypes are reinforced, and then it actually creates a cycle that's negative. But that's me sitting here not having actually personally experienced it. So I can't imagine what it's like for Neymar to be called those things. And I could never tell Neymar that, mate, you should like just stand back and, you know, take that, because obviously like you could speak to it as well. I can only imagine it's a really, really difficult thing to experience.
Yeah.
But I guess the objective has to be in mind when responding. It's hard when emotions are high and you've experienced something like an attack on your identity or your person.
Yeah.
But you know, what are we trying to achieve in that moment? It's probably trying to get that person to realize that what they've said is hurtful, and they should never say that again, because it's like it makes people feel like they don't belong or they're not safe or whatever. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that it's a big problem, because, you know, in Australia we have the situation with like Adam Goodes, for example, who was called an ape by a 13-year-old child. So it's something that's in society. And then also with Besart Berisha, I don't know if you remember this one, but a couple of years ago, it was the Melbourne City goalkeeper, I think it was Dean Bazanis, called Berisha a gypsy. I think Berisha is from Albania. So it's like it happens in sport, probably across grassroots to professional sport. And some people say, oh, it's just words, it doesn't hurt, whatever. But it's not that. It's like, it's the cascading effect that can have. You know, obviously this 13-year-old girl heard that from somewhere, heard that, and had kind of been around that type of environment where it was okay to call black people or whoever an ape. And it has real world effects. It's because football or sport is a microcosm for the rest of society. If you're letting those things that happen in sport, then they're also happening in society as well at large. And just touching on that point again about the fact that it's not just words. It's when you call someone a derogatory word like an ape or a gypsy, it's marginalizing their ethnicity, and it's marginalizing their people and their culture. And it's a very slippery slope from just name calling to then people actually feeling like those particular ethnicities aren't as valuable as other ethnicities. And then from there, it can get into, you know, we've seen in history, there's all types of, oppression. For example, in Australia, I think it was up until the 1960s or 1970s, Aboriginals were called flora and fauna in our constitution or in legal documents. And then in America, you've got the 3/5 of a man, where black people were considered 3/5 of a man. So these types of words and these types of phrases, they can have real world implications, and they can inform policies, and they can even go as far as, you know, like we've seen Nazi Germany. That's at the extremes of that end of racism. So it's very important that we stamp these kind of things out whilst they're still just words before they become anything bigger.
Absolutely. That leads really nicely into the second question, where someone has asked, how would you like your teammates to conduct themselves regarding issues of racism? And I guess I'll add, you know, we've seen in football quite a few times that a popular response is a player or a team walking off the pitch when racism occurs in a game. How would you, as a player who's experienced something like that, how would you like your teammates to respond if you experience racism on the pitch?
Well, I would hope that my teammates would realize that it is a problem, and that it's not acceptable for people to make, whether it's the crowd or whether it's an opposition player or even a teammate, make racist comments. And I'd hope that they understand that slippery slope for the real world effects that type of behavior can have. So that's the first thing. And I think that having these conversations will allow people to realize the link between the words and then the real life implications in society. So there's that. And then probably like, I don't expect my teammates to, go on a march, a Black Lives Matter march with me or something through the streets, but just the support, listening, trying to understand. I don't expect you to take everything that I'm saying as gospel, but it's about the conversation and deciding for yourself what you think is right or what is wrong, and being open to that argument or that dialogue. But yeah, I think that I really don't know. I really don't know what I would do, and I'm lucky that I haven't had it so far as an adult, where I've had audience who have told me that have made racist comments or whatever, and then have, like, I don't know what I would do, whether I'd walk off or I'd stay on the pitch. I'm not sure yet. Something that I never figure out. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's the conversation in itself is the important part, and like feeling supported by your teammates and things that you do is really important. And I think that a lot of football clubs that I've been in, I haven't reached the same depths with people in my relationships with them to know that these things are important to them or issues to them. Like only through this project have I had conversations with you about this, and you mentioned in last week's episode that you hadn't spoken to a lot of people about it. But I think it's in its very essence is the really important part, that football should be a place where, like, I really know you as a person, and therefore I really care about you, and then therefore on the pitch, if it might be physically putting my body on the line for you, it's also standing up for things that like if something happens against you or something happens against me, that we stick up for each other, because not only are we teammates, but we're mates, and we're bound together by not only a common goal, but by being friends and that friendship. It's an interesting topic. Do you have any, I guess, thinking right now? You said that you haven't really worked out what you'd like to happen, but do you think conversations like this at the football club is a good place to start?
Yeah, 100%. Like, the conversation needs to happen before the incident. So hopefully it never happens, but you need a space like this to be able to have the conversation, so that when you get to the event or the incident, when it might happen, then you've got an idea of, okay, well, how should I react? Because I think that if you don't think about those things, and if you don't have these kind of conversations, then when the event happens, then you resort to violence because you just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And yeah, as I said before, violence is often not the right option. So yeah, having these conversations is super important. Yeah,
absolutely. And that, again, well done. It leads nicely into question 3, and the final question. Do you think that football clubs are doing enough to create an inclusive space for people from different backgrounds?
Yes, I think in Australia, yes, football clubs are doing enough right now. When we say inclusive, if I'm just talking about ethnicity and race, then yes, you see all kinds of people from all across the world who have the opportunity to play football. I think the one thing that's probably stopping all kinds of people from playing football, especially at a grassroots level, is the fact that the junior fees are so high in Australia. I've seen some clubs that have fees over $2,000 per year per child, which is like just crazy. I mean, when I started playing football, it was like $300, and that was like 20 years ago. Yeah. So it's jumped up a lot, and coupled with the fact that I just read this statistic before, but 55% of Australians don't have $1,000 to afford an unexpected expense. And so if a person's kid comes to them and says, "Hey, mom or dad, I want to play football today. Can you sign me up? Because we need to sign up before such and such date." 55% of Australians won't have the money to be able to spend on their kids' football program for that year, which is just insane. And I think that negatively affects, obviously, the poorer people and probably the there's probably sort of demographics that allow certain people from different backgrounds to be able to afford that $2,000 payment, and others just can't afford it, and so they just don't have access to football. So I think that's something. Whether that's the clubs that need to bring down their fees, obviously there's economics behind that, or the government needs to support the clubs at a grassroots level. There's obviously a case for that too, but that's something that I think that probably needs to be thought about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that culturally at football clubs, there's often like a really diverse amount of backgrounds that come together and play together, and I think that's really cool. And like I'm of a Jewish background, and I've always found that was okay, and like people might not understand what that is or what that means, but that it was okay, and like I felt comfortable and safe. I didn't feel the need to hide that part of my identity. But I know that there are people who have experienced things where, whether it's like a part of the banter at the club or things of that nature, that actually in reality make it hard for people to be themselves wholly at football. And I do think that that's part of a broader issue where people often come to football and have to be a certain type of persona. And like I think about where this all started for me, this whole project was me geeing myself up in the car when I was having a really crappy day to be bubbly and fun and like talk smack with like teammates like Ratty, for example. I love to banter with, but sometimes like on that day I just I didn't feel up to it. But I still felt the need to get there. And I think that's where the inclusivity of the space could improve, making it maybe less one-dimensional, where it's not just a place where you throw around banter and insults and stuff. It can also be a place where you just have a good conversation with someone, or you can be a bit off, and that's all right. Your teammate, like a friend, would just puts their arm around you and says, "Mate, like, what's going on?" Yeah, I've actually experienced that too. It's you'll be all right, sort of thing. Do you see that as an area of growth as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're very lucky at Brunswick that we've got such a diverse group of people from all over the world, and our head coach speaks Spanish, and he's Latin American, and then we've got a few other Latin Americans, and we've got people from all over the world. So yeah, we're very lucky in that sense. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, mate, I think I'm happy to wrap it up there. That was really great. Again, you've spoken to some issues that are really hard to speak about, but you've done so with class. And I actually spoke to my mum this morning, and she listened to our episode last week, and she was blown away by how articulate you were. So I thought I'd pass on that bit of feedback. But yeah, thanks again for sitting here with me and having conversations about things that traditionally can be quite challenging. But I think it's really important for everyone to hear.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks to your mum too for that nice comment.
My pleasure. Cheers. Thanks, Cobb.
Take care, mate.